So no better way to kickstart our 3 days of scale-up. Let's start off with AXA, because as a global insurer and a global investor, AXA is internationally recognized as a financial institution that's championed sustainability and in leadership as well in its core insurance and investment activities, particularly through its commitment on climate action. So let me call up on stage Thomas Buberl. He is, of course, the CEO of AXA.
Dear Augustin, Eric and Satya, good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for inviting me to the 2018 Global Roundtable. This event is a very important event to tackle global challenges, and I'm very glad to see the launch of the UN Principles for Responsible Banking happening here. These are new principles, but I hope they have the same influence as other principles, such as the UN Principles for Responsible Investment and the UN Principles for Sustainable Insurance have already had. Today, I would like to focus on climate change, and this is something that is very dear to our heart. 3 years ago, during COP21, the world's governments committed to contain global warming under 2 degrees. This has led to a tremendous mobilization across all the industries. But when we look where we are today, we can say that this is far from being enough. And last year, at the One Planet Summit, President Macron mentioned something very important, which is we are losing the battle. This was not just to cause alarm for the sake of causing alarm. It is clearly a very sensible call to action. If we all believe in climate change, we know it is serious, and we know we need to act. All sectors, be it private, be it public, every industry, every investor, every insurer, we all need to have the same goal. How do we get to a low-carbon economy? AXA, as you have seen in many announcements, is extremely serious about climate change. We have been the first mover in the industry, and we now want to go even further. But before I talk about how we scale up, I would like to say where we are and take stock. We have acted since the first Climate Finance Day in 2015. We were the first large investor to initiate the divestment from coal, sending a very strong signal ahead of COP21. I don't need to explain the rationale of this to an audience like you, but I must tell you, at the time, it was odd to take that decision, and it was even more odd to communicate about it, because everybody took it by surprise. At the time, the action was very much directed against the industry who caused the problems, utility and fossil fuel, not the financial service industry. And therefore, at the time, we needed to think out of the box to come to that decision. Secondly, divesting from coal is even today still not the norm. In my industry, insurance, less than 10% of the insurers have restricted coal investment. And if we look at the largest insurers of this world, it is only a third. There is still a lot of potential. If you go beyond the investment and look at the insurance of coal plants, for example, you see that it's even less insurers. This means that today, even if AXA and a couple others decide not to invest, not to insure anymore, there is still a buyer, there is still an insurer who will fill the gap. We need to really act against that and bring it to the next level. A year ago, during the One Planet Summit in Paris, we announced a very ambitious climate strategy. We increased our coal divestment to 3 billion euros, which is very, very high. We also said we would divest 700 million euro from oil sands. At the same time, because we want to be a responsible investor, we increased our commitment to green investments to 12 billion by 2020. In addition to that, we joined the Climate Action 100+ coalition, and we committed to publish a climate risk analysis which is fully in line with the TCFD. And we were the first insurer at the time to implement underwriting restrictions on coal and oil sands. These announcements were not delayed, they were immediate, and I would like to give you an update where we are today, 1 year after. On the divestments, 100% of the equities have been divested, and the remaining debt assets are running off as planned. On the green investments, we have now reached 10.9 billion. Our goal is 12 billion. In this year alone, 2018, we have added an extra 2.7 billion. These investments are necessary to support the energy transition and to direct the capital flows in the right directions. We've also stopped underwriting new business on coal and oil sands construction and property, and all existing policies will have been lapsed by the end of next year. On the climate analysis, we published our second TCFD report this spring, and we don't only talk about TCFD, we do practice it. We've also decided, in addition, to support academic research on the energy transition, because we do believe we cannot only stop investing in bad things, we need to support the investment and the research in our future. My presence here today is not just to give you a simple update. It is also to go further and to scale up. This year, something very important has changed at AXA. We have acquired in March 2018 the XL Group. With this acquisition, we will be the largest, the #1 commercial line insurer in the world, which means that we will insure factories, large infrastructures, shipping and airlines, and we'll be the #1. This is exactly the place where we can act even more as a responsible insurer, and where we can go not only to give shareholder engagement, but to be very clear about insurer engagement. As you can imagine, the underwriting restrictions that we have put on the old AXA portfolio, the question comes, does it also apply to the much larger portfolio that we now have with XL? Because all of a sudden, our activity in the sector is much, much bigger. Today, I would like to announce to you that we want to be extremely consistent. We have decided to extend those climate policies also to the new AXA XL division, which means implementing those underwriting and investment restrictions to a much larger and much more significant book of business. What does it mean? AXA XL will no longer underwrite the construction and operations of coal plants, coal mines, oil sand extraction and pipelines, as well as Arctic drilling. Secondly, this will impact a significant amount, roughly 100 million euro of premiums, and it will be effective as of January 2020. We will also apply the various investment restrictions and exclusions that we have on AXA also to XL, which will add another 660 million of divestment to our list. This is a significant effort on the part of the AXA teams, and a lot of us will be greatly impacted by those restrictions. As you can imagine, this is not only about changing the spreadsheets, it is very much also about changing mindset. I'm very pleased to see that a growing number of insurers are making commitments on decarbonization and climate resilience, both to their insurance activities, but also to their investment activities. However, I really hope that we can go further, and that we can in particular go further when it comes to the insurance coverage of this industry, because this will create much more momentum. But it needs a more collective effort. We cannot continue just simply doing our business, knowing that global warming, knowing that climate is an issue. The natural and social costs of these disasters are escalating. The protection gap, if you look at the major events that are happening, is widening. We are talking today about 100 billion of costs that are not covered. And therefore, I'm very happy to announce that AXA is supporting the idea that is put forward by the UNPSI of a climate ambition coalition. This would be a coalition of insurers that are convened by the PSI, who would not only commit to the action of decarbonization and climate resilience in their insurance and investment activity, but also raise their ambition in line with the Paris Agreement. As a conclusion, sustainability is often perceived as an obvious business choice. However, when you are in the business and when you have the experience of having done it, it is not the case. It is both difficult and very costly. However, I can tell you something, we are regretting nothing that we did. Divesting, investment restrictions, underwriting restrictions are exactly the right way to go, despite the fact that these are significant business sacrifices. The business case of sustainability is challenging, particularly in the short term, but if you look in the medium and long term, it is clearly where we need to go. Rather than seeing climate change as a burden, we should reframe it as an opportunity. We should support the transition, and we should really take this challenge, because the climate, the global, the Earth deserves our best effort to make it a better and more sustainable place to live. I am very happy to be here with you today, and I know you do not support, as much as I do, a 4-degree world. Rather than supporting the past through our investments and our underwriting, let's support a low-carbon future. Thank you very much.